3 Lives, 3 Worlds, Lotus Steps Book 3. One Step for 1,000 Culpas. Chapter 11. By Tang Qi. That night, it was almost midnight, and His Highness the Third Highness still had not returned to Wushuan Lake Pavilion. In the water pavilion, Nanzi, the maid of honor, was worried about her master's needs. The queen, do you need me to go to Fulan Hall? Just say that the queen just took the medicinal soup, but suddenly she felt. If you feel unwell, would you please come over and take a look, Your Highness? Wanner was practicing calligraphy under the lamp, and when he heard the words, he said calmly, "The king's method of competing for favor in the harem is not good at the examination, and you also let Gu use it?" Nancy was frightened and knew that she had said the wrong thing, so she quickly confessed. Nancy is the maidservant who has been following Wanner since she returned to the Bluebird clan. She has endured many hardships with her over the past 10,000 years. During the first few hundred years when Wanner returned to the Bluebird clan, she was in a very difficult situation. Her eldest sister and brother always bullied her, and Nancy suffered a lot on her behalf. Nancy is not very smart, but she is extremely loyal. Although she occasionally acts stupid in front of her, she is very knowledgeable and cautious outside, so Wanner has always been tolerant of Nancy. Seeing Nancy kneeling down to plead guilty, Wanyu raised his free hand and motioned for her to get up, half giving instructions and half admonishing. The Third Highness is shrewd not only in serious and important matters. The women he has experienced, he has seen countless ways that women compete for favor. You must be very careful when using tricks against him, otherwise, even if you make a mistake in half a move, you will lose everything. She sighed softly. If otherwise, why would I bother to plan so hard? Before she could finish her words, she paused for a moment and said, "That's all. You just need to understand that you have to be careful with His Highness the Third Prince." Nancy confessed again and said that he would obey the order of the queen. Wanner nodded, thought for a while, and then told Nancy, "Go to the palace treasury to select some precious medicinal materials and send them to Fulan Palace. Tell me that Gui is concerned about the young master. If you can find out what happened to the child, it's the best. If you can't find it, that's fine. Just come back." Nancy hurriedly accepted the order and left. After Nancy left, Wanner stopped writing. When talking to Nancy, she was calm, as if she had a plan in mind, but the scrawled words in her pen betrayed her mood. She was far from as calm as she looked. Forbearance is a science, and Wanyu is confident that he has studied it deeply. If she had not been able to endure hardship, she thought that she would never be able to surpass her brothers and sisters, step on their bones, and finally ascend to the high position of the king. It was precisely because of her endurance that she did not rush into chasing Liansong when Yu Ji took the throne 1,400 years ago. Because she understood that before her position was stable, she would not be able to try her best to get the position next to Liansong, and that position would be extremely difficult to get if she didn't try her best. It took her 1,400 years to regain power. Last month, the last aristocratic family that opposed her became her soul under the sword. At that time, she felt completely at ease, thinking that she could finally indulge herself to follow her heart and fulfill her obsession. Not long after, Jiyu rescued Yi Wajun. This is truly a God-given opportunity. Wanner seized this opportunity. Everything was her painstaking planning. It was her deliberate plan to choose seclusion when Liansong and his entourage arrived at Lutai Palace. It was her deliberate plan to fail in the pass and put them in danger. It was her deliberate plan to reunite with Liansong when he was about to die. She wants to get him and become his concubine. Thousands of years of obsession took root in her heart, creating demonic obstacles. The demonic obstacle in her heart contributed to her every step of the scheme. She knew very well that she needed a high status to match Liansong, but with a high status, it would be difficult for him to pity him, so she needed an extremely weak posture to win Liansong's sympathy. At that time, her life was hanging by a thread. It was really hanging by a thread. When she was gathering energy to rush through the barrier, she deliberately chose a side road and used a dangerous method to cause herself internal injuries that were extremely difficult to cure. And that's exactly what she wanted. Because she knew that for her mother's sake, Lian Song would not leave her alone. The more difficult her injuries were to heal and the more they recurred, the better. That way Lian Song wouldn't leave the Bluebird clan so quickly. She needs a chance to spend time with him. Only by facing each other day and night can they eliminate the estrangement as soon as possible and return to the beginning. That's why she treated herself so cruelly. Because you're not ruthless enough, you can't deceive him. She has always been able to be cruel to herself. When he was in UNG Palace, he was so kind to her. He truly cared for her and pampered her. She wanted to go back to that time. No, actually not just back to that time. She also wanted to be better with him. She hopes to be in love with him for a long time by getting along like this day and night. She also prides herself on having an advantage over everyone else. If Lian Song would fall in love with a certain woman one day, she felt that she had the best chance of winning. After all, in the past many years, only she and Chang Yi were special to Lian Song. That's what everyone says. But she never expected that an extremely beautiful half-year-old child would come out in the middle. And Lian Song seemed to care more about that child than he did to himself or Chang Yi back then. Although he simply loves the child, who knows if the child will turn into another one of her when he grows up, fall in love with him, and then become her fierce enemy? If Lian Song is still the same as before and there is no one she cares about, then she can spend time with him in the hope of capturing his heart bit by bit. But now, should she change her strategy? Wanner frowned deeply and couldn't help but crumple the damaged paper into a ball and hold it tightly. After a while, a ball of green flame suddenly appeared in the palm of her hand, and the yellowish paper that was clenched into a ball suddenly ignited, turned to ashes in an instant, and fell from her fingers. At midnight, Nancy finally came back and reported that Fulon Palace was surrounded by a barrier and she could not enter. However, Tianvu stayed outside, took the rare medicinal materials she carefully selected, and thanked her. She took the opportunity to inquire with Tianvu. Nancy said, Tianvu's statement is similar to Kong Shanlao's statement. He also said that the young master stayed up for several nights in Fubo Hall to guard the blossoms of Yiyut An, which damaged his energy and caused the heart disease from the old year to relapse. I fainted in the prince's main hall. Now I have woken up. It's nothing serious. I just need to take medicine to recover. As for the barrier around Fulon Palace, the young master was young and used to being lively like a monkey. His Highness was afraid that he would not be able to stay in the palace and sneak out, so he placed a barrier around the entire palace. It was to restrain the young master. Nancy also reported that after Tianvu said these words, he sighed deeply and said that His Highness the Third Highness, who was looking after the young master in the palace, was also very troubled. She listened to Tianvu's wishes because the young master had always been treated by Yaojun in the sky and only took Yaojun's prescriptions, so it seemed that the Third Highness had already planned to return to the ninth heaven. Under the night light, after reporting the findings, Nancy asked Wanner reluctantly, "Are we going to let His Highness leave like this?" Wanner stood in front of the window, looking at the dark lake, and smiled coldly. "No, the prince and the child can leave, but he has to stay." Nancy was puzzled. How can the female monarch keep the Third Highness? She thought of a possibility and couldn't help but change her color. Does the female monarch want to hurt herself? Wanner lowered her eyes, using the same method twice. Do you think he is a fool like Wang Kao? She closed her eyes, opened the Xingling cave. He is interested in the Xingling cave. Now, there is only this I can keep him here. Nancy was suffocated, frightened, and horrified. I need your soul seal to open the Star Order cave, but now your body. It doesn't matter. Wanyu replied to her, murmuring in a low voice as if he didn't care as long as everything will be worth it. Early the next morning, two immortals, Wei Wu and Wei Ji, were put into the barrier of Fulon Hall by Tianvu. Wu and Ji are twins, and they are the immortals who are best at hiding among the 12 martial attendants of UNG Palace. Since the news of the prince's serious illness spread, the two of them hid in Fubo Palace on the orders of His Highness Third Prince. When Bai Qian came to Lutai Palace for the first time, The two immortals Wu and Ji could not resist the powerful sleeping technique and both fell asleep. After waking up, the second immortal noticed something strange and went to report it to His Highness the Third Highness. His Highness the Third Highness then gave the two of them the awakening talisman. Therefore, when Xiao Zudi turned into a butterfly and guarded the prince's main hall the next night, the two immortals also relied on the talismans in their arms to stay awake for a while, until Bai Qian entered the hall, took off his shoes and went to the couch to perform spells and medicine for the prince, just fell asleep. The next day, the two immortals Wuji reported to Lian Song that Bai Qianyu came to treat the prince at night. After hearing their submission, the Third Highness seemed to have already known it and told them not to look at the prince anymore and let the matter go. They also thought that they would be successful and retire, but unexpectedly something happened to Zhu Ti in the Fubo Hall that afternoon. That night, they were called back by His Highness the Third Prince to squat in the Fubo Hall. Squatting all night, there was no gain. Immortal Wei Wu reported to His Highness the Third Highness, Lao Kangshan has been staying in front of His Highness the Prince's bed. He will check His Highness's pulse every hour and check His Highness's soul to ensure that the prince is fine. But for some unknown reason, even here, the immortal Bai Qian who stayed here for 2 nights did not come back last night. His Highness the Third Prince was quiet for a moment and ordered them, keep guarding there. If the immortal comes again, find a way to stop her and don't let her give Yi Hua medicine anymore. After a pause, he added, in addition, you don't want to expose yourself. The two immortals Wuji looked at each other. Is it difficult to stop immortal Bai Qian from giving medicine to the prince? Not difficult. But is it difficult to avoid exposing oneself and to stop immortal Bai Qian from giving medicine to the prince? His Highness the Third Highness is really afraid that they will be killed. However, the two immortals did not dare to complain and accepted the order with sad faces. After the two immortals left, His Highness the Third Highness thought quietly for a moment. He ordered the Wuji immortals to try to stop Bai Qian, not because he was worried that Bai Qian would harm Yi Hua. Yesterday, when Zhu Tifu saw him in Fubo Hall, she said something, saying that restoring Yi Hua's erased memory would definitely disturb his soul. In order to calm his soul, she used the soul-fixing technique. Although he didn't say anything about this sentence at that time, it was not the occasion to say this at that time, but his mind was racing and he already had a guess. When Bai Qian pulled Yi Hua back from the line of life and death, how could she know that Yi Hua hadn't woken up yet? Then Yi Hua couldn't remember anything about that day. Maybe his memory was erased by Bai Qian. Why did Zhu Ti intervene to restore Yi Hua's memory? After taking her back to Fulan Palace to settle down last night, he asked Yinlin. Yinlin thought he was blaming Zhu Ti, so he suppressed his anger and told him that the memory-erasing technique was detrimental to the prince who was warming his soul, but Zhu Ti was actually risking his life to help the prince. The Celestial Clan owes Gu Gu a favor. Naturally, the Celestial Clan owed Gu Gu a favor. Bai Qian was not actually a doctor. She came here 2 nights in a row to treat the prince's injuries, mostly relying on the elixirs from God Jiyan. However, the state of the prince's soul that had been treated by Zhu Ti was now different from before. In this case, Jiyan's elixir may not be able to cure the prince's disease anymore. Speaking of which, he originally released the news that Yi Hua was seriously ill just to find out Bai Qian's true attitude towards Yi Hua. When Bai Qian learned that Yi Hua was seriously ill, she traveled thousands of miles to treat him 2 nights in a row, which was enough to prove that the rumors circulating in Bohuang that she wanted to break off her engagement with Yi Hua were probably just a misunderstanding. Bai Qian has no intention of breaking off the engagement, nor does he intend to take advantage of the Blue Bird Clan. The Blue Bird Clan may have no other secret behind holding Yi Hua. It should be true that Wan Yu had confessed to him at the beginning. It was Ju Yu who accidentally saved the prince. Seeing the rare opportunity, she took the initiative to block the news and lure him here. From this point of view, the matter of the Blue Bird Clan has nothing to do with the Crown Prince and Bai Qian, but it was caused by him. Thinking of this, His Highness poured himself a cup of tea. Before he could take a sip, a wooden bead placed on the desk buzzed softly, reminding him that another hour had passed and he should go to the inner room to check on Zhu Ti's soul. His Highness put down his cup and stood up neatly. A green sheep double bowl lamp was placed in front of the jade bed, and 2 pots of soothing gardenia were placed next to the lamp. His Highness the Third Prince lifted the gauze curtain. The woman lying in the middle of the jade bed changed her sleeping position. When he put her on this couch last night, she was lying on her back, sleeping in a very strict posture. When he came to check on her soul before, she was lying flat on her back. Now, she was lying on her side on the couch. Her originally smooth black hair was spread messily under her body. The quilt was placed around her waist, and she was lying on her side. One hand was placed on the side of the cheek, the other hand was placed on the waist, and the corner of the cloud quilt was tightened. It could be seen from her frown and knuckles that she was sleeping very uneasily at this hour. His Highness's heart sank a little, and he leaned down and put his hand to her forehead. He was concentrating on feeling whether her soul was turbulent. Suddenly, a hand held his wrist. Accompanying that action was a soft hum. His Highness paused. He lowered his eyes and looked at the woman below him, and his hand left her forehead. The woman did not open her eyes or even change her sleeping position. She seemed to just hold his hand unconsciously. When he tried to pull out, she frowned, snorted again, as if she felt uncomfortable. She held his hand with both hands and put it in front of her. This time, His Highness the Third Highness did not move again, and she seemed to have found a reliable object that she could rely on in her restless sleep. Her frowning eyebrows relaxed slightly, and her breathing became smooth and even. He brought Zhu Ti back to Fulon Hall and went to great lengths to create an excellent sleeping environment for her. The original purpose was to give her a good rest and stabilize her soul. Now it seems that his hands are better than those gardenias and can be used as a soothing tool for her. Half a month ago, little Zudi also had a nightmare. At that time, she had to pull his sleeves all night to fall asleep. Now, his eyes stopped on the hands held by the 2 of them, thinking inappropriately. Now, she is even better. Because of the previous experience, His Highness the Third Highness adapted quickly. Just like the time half a month ago, he made a seat on the footrest, sat on the seat, and let her hold his hand and sleep peacefully. However, he still had some serious business to deal with today and couldn't delay it, so he transformed into a short table and placed it in front of him, shook out his sleeves, put a letter on the short table, unfolded the letter and started reading. This letter comes from Shirley Talon. Half a month ago, little Zudi had a dream about seeing him for the first time in Encanana Hall, and it seemed that he was recovering his memory, so he wrote a letter to Jian God to inquire about the reason. The reply from Lord Jian entered Fulon Hall this morning. Only then did he have time to take a look. The god replied in the letter, maybe it was the magic power in little Zudi's body that was instinctively fighting against the evil force. The magic power slowly recovered, and the moisturizing things silently replaced the spiritual power that resisted those evil forces. The spiritual power was replaced and was able to support the fairy body again, and her fairy body began to grow slowly. And as the immortal body grows, those sleeping memories will naturally be slowly awakened. This should be the reason. God Jian also told him that during this period, Xiao Zudi's soul might become more unstable, so he must be careful. Now there is no need to pay attention. She has gone off the beaten track and returned to normal. What he was worried about now was the evil power of the Western Emperor's blade in her body. Qingjiang's Shihuang blade was extremely powerful, but he and the Emperor had not found out where the power it carried came from. They only knew that the evil power and Qingjiang complemented each other, and that only he could do it. The power he summoned, and no one except Qingjiang could peel off the evil power from the blade. The God of Light's immortal body is indeed special enough. It can actually separate the evil power of the Western Emperor's blade from the sword and incorporate it into his own body. While they were investigating Wusu, Zhu Ti actually gained this power. But she only accepted a little bit and was forced to do this. This power cannot stay in her body for long. Jian once said that when she recovered, she would naturally know how to extract those evil powers from her body. I hope she really knows. The Third Highness raised his hand briefly, took out a pen and paper, thought for a moment, and began to reply to the Lord Jian. In the inner room, the light of the pearl shines brightly. The young man is leaning sideways next to the jade couch, holding a pen in his left hand and writing on the plain paper. His left hand is not his dominant hand, but there is no feeling of sluggishness when writing, and his writing is still as fast as flying. The letter was written quickly, and when he was sealing it, His Highness felt his right hand being pulled and moved. He looked up and saw Zhu Ti changing her sleeping position. Originally, she was lying on her side, holding his hand in front of her, still a few inches away from her face. At this time, she grabbed his hand and placed it on her left cheek. It seemed as if he was stroking her cheek with his hand. His Highness the Third Highness could not help but be stunned. His eyes stopped on her face. He realized the unusualness and intimacy of the gesture. When she was a child, she was very coquettish, and sometimes she would behave similarly to him, a close brother. For example, she would sometimes hug his arm, and she would jump into him when she was frightened after a nightmare. In the arms. He never thought those actions were out of character. But at this time, it seemed to be different. Today's God of Light has the face and graceful figure of a young girl. When she makes such an action again, the ambiguity hidden in this intimate action is ready to come out. However, His Highness the Third Highness is not a fool, and he is at a loss for what to do because of the unconscious intimacy of a beautiful woman. He was stunned for only a moment and quickly came to his senses. She was still breathing long and fell into a deep sleep. She grabbed his hand with one hand so that his palm could touch her cheek. The other hand was clenched into a fist and gently placed on the back of his hand. The hands, which are whiter than mutton fat jade, are soft and shiny, and the clenched fists have no strength, like a white snow tower in the rain, beautiful and weak. Under his palm, her cheeks were warm and delicate, with a little redness showing through the bottom of her crystal skin, like rouge melted on snow. The snow-white skin is used as the base, and the eyebrows, corners of the eyes, and cheeks are red, just like the lotus called the dancing concubine in the Yaoqi. White Snow Tower, dancing concubine. His Highness's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He felt that he must have used these two kinds of flowers to describe someone. The feeling was so real that he couldn't help but think about it. But after thinking about it for a long time, I couldn't remember who he had used them to describe. Among the vague-faced women in past memories, none of them could compare to these two kinds of flowers. He raised his hand and rubbed his forehead. Recently, there have been more and more times when he always feels that something or something is familiar, but when he looks back at the past, he has no clue. It seems that we need to go to Xingling Cave as soon as possible to see the Beast of the Four Realms. After seeing the holy beast of the Blue Bird tribe and going to its realm of self-image, he might be able to understand what all this is about. Is it his illusion or something wrong with his memory? I believe there will be an answer soon. At this moment, Zhu Ti, who was on the jade couch, suddenly let out a soft moan. His Highness's attention returned to her, thinking that she was about to wake up and wondering if he should withdraw in order to avoid embarrassment between the two of them. Hands on. Unexpectedly, the woman just tilted her head and unconsciously nudged the palm of his hand with her left cheek. After this action, she seemed to feel comfortable, so she rubbed him again and then buried half of her face in his palm. He felt the slow, long breath, which was warm and tickling. And the little movement she made just now by tilting her head to rub his palm also made him feel familiar. Is it because little Zudi also has similar cute little moves, so he feels familiar? Or is there any other reason? His Highness the Third Prince suppressed the questions in his mind. A strand of hair fell down from her forehead and touched the end of her eyes. It probably tickled her, so she raised her hand and grabbed it. The skin around the eyes was delicate, but her movements were a bit heavy, and there was a red mark when she touched it. He was shocked when he saw it, and he couldn't help but blurt out, "Don't." After he said the words, he realized that she was sleeping, so there was no point in saying goodbye to her, so he took away her hand that was still unconsciously rubbing the end of her eyes, pushed up the messy hair, and tucked it behind her ear. She finally felt comfortable and couldn't help but rub his palm again. Outside, Tianvu had been back for a while. Seeing that the light in the inner room was always on, but His Highness had not come out for a long time, she was a little worried that something had happened. After hesitating for a moment, she decided to go in and have a look. As a result, as soon as she raised the curtain, she saw the scene of Her Highness leaning forward to twist the hair of the ancestor god. Under the dim light of the pearl, Goddess Zhu Ti was lying in the snow-like brocade, as if she was asleep. His Highness looked down at her, his expression a little too gentle. In the past, His Highness treated little Ziti so tenderly, and Tianvu didn't notice anything at that time. But when little Ziti returned to her true self and became this charming and beautiful girl, the atmosphere between her and His Highness. Tianvu felt a surge in his heart. Trembling, an idea suddenly came to her mind, but it was so disrespectful. She quickly suppressed it and lowered the curtain in shock. End of Chapter 11, Book 3.